grown, I'll fly away. Like a bird from these prison bars have flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory. I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. I'll fly away. I'll fly away.
Good morning. Welcome to Walnut Grove Online. When I was in high school, we had this motivational speaker come to our school, and it was kind of a big deal. It's been years ago, but I remember it so clearly and so vividly. He was a speaker that was world known. I believe he's from Australia. His name is Nick Vujicic. Maybe it's possible that some of you saw him back when he came into the area. See, Nick Vujicic was born into a life of adversity, into a situation where the deck was stacked against him. See, Nick was born with no arms and no legs. And he faced this adversity from the moment he was born, without even knowing it. It was a challenge to him. Yet, he would go around the world and he would share this amazing and beautiful story. He would tell this message to the people who would listen. He would say, there were times when I would think to myself, I can't do this or I can't do that. And he said, when you keep concentrating on the things that you wish you had or the things you wish you didn't have, you sort of forget the things that you do have. There's no point in my life, he would say, where I wish I had arms and legs, I wish I had arms and legs, I wish I had arms and legs would help. He would continue to say, what I've seen in my life is there are a few key principles, but the first of those is to be thankful. What a message for today. It is so easy for us to fixate on the things that we don't have, the things that are different, the things that we now have to do. See, I didn't want to come up here and do the old song and dance of giving flippant reasons to be happy this year. As I wrote down this message and I sat down to think about how to speak today, I knew it was 2020. And I knew that COVID had kind of left a desolate landscape for all of us. There's many of us who have struggled immensely this year. Whether we've lost jobs or lost job security, whether we've been sick or know someone who's been sick, or we lost a loved one. Or maybe it's all of us who have suffered isolation from friends and family in some form or fashion this year. So I knew, how could I get up here and talk about giving thanks for our pets and for the fact that the mashed potatoes are good this year? I couldn't do that. But then, as I was preparing, I remembered Nick Vujicic. I remembered how he inspired hope to each and every person that he spoke to. And I wanted to ask the question, how could he be happy? A man with no arms and no legs, how could he be thankful? And I want to ask the question today, how can we be thankful in times such as this? See, often we base our thankfulness on external things. We base our happiness and joy and thankfulness on things that surround us. How many zeros are in your bank account? What is the name brand on your clothes or on your shoes? How many likes did that post get on Facebook? How many comments from high school classmates did you get? Or maybe it's, we like to talk about the vacations we went on, the trips we took. And all those things kind of are gone in a different way, aren't they, this year? Because 2020 is different. We're living in this quote-unquote new normal. That trip to Punta Cana had to be canceled. Thanksgiving is going to look different this year, more than likely, for most of us. There will be faces that we didn't see. Heck, you're watching me online. That is not a normal thing. And it seems like all of these things have been washed away. Our job security is out of the window. Our health can vanish in a moment. It can vanish by walking next to the wrong person getting grapefruits at the local county market. But Nick's story puts all of this into perspective, doesn't it? And what's interesting is Nick's story actually reminds me of the story of the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I mean Joseph. Do you remember that story in the book of Genesis? The story of Joseph? Right? It's a very interesting story for us to visit today. I know Stephen's been preaching in the book of Revelation, so I thought I'd go to the opposite side of the Bible and preach out of the book of Genesis. I like bookends. See, Joseph's story is one that's taught in Sunday schools and is the theme of VBS weeks. If you've been around churches very long, you're more than likely have heard this story. So it's kind of familiar. But I want us to think about this story today. It all starts out with a child who's 17 years old. And he's treated like the golden child of his family, which everybody loves, said with much sarcasm. See, his father Jacob doted on him and gave him gifts. He gave him his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And what would happen is Joseph, time and time again, would get these dreams about how his brothers and his whole family were going to bow down to him and worship. And he would rub their faces in it. He interpreted dreams with the deft hand of an iron fist. See, Joseph was special, his father treated him special, and he knew it. And so his brothers got jealous because Joseph did a great job of rubbing his brothers' faces in it, letting them know how special he was. And so what do Joseph's brothers do? Do you remember? They hatch a plan. They sit there and they go, what can we do to get rid of Joseph? And they happen to find a cistern, a pit that they can throw him in. A pit that you can't climb out of. I want us to step into Joseph's shoes this morning. It's easy for us to take biblical characters and biblical stories and lift them up on a pedestal, but we need to realize that these were real people in real times with real emotions and real feelings. See, I know that our families are messy. Odds are there's that aunt or uncle who you're a little bit happy can't come to Thanksgiving this year because they're going to be a little bit crazy. I'm just going to go out on a limb, though, that your aunt or uncle didn't throw you into a pit to die. And what's worse about this story as it unfolds is you understand that there's only one brother of Joseph's, his name is Reuben, who actually wants him to stay alive. He actually argues for him to stay alive. Only one. How crazy is that? That all of his brothers, except for one, were the crazy aunt and uncle. And what a crazy family dynamic. See, what happens is Reuben tries to talk his brothers out of doing this and going through with it, but the only thing that stops them is money. The only thing that enticed Joseph's brothers more than just killing him was that they could profit off of it too. So what I want us to do is to step into Joseph's shoes and put ourselves into that situation, into that moment. Don't separate ourselves from it. You went from being the promised child, the special one, the one with the amazing coat, the best coat in all of the land, and now you're a kid at the bottom of a pit, likely bruised, beaten. Who knows, he may have had broken bones. And what you hear as you try to claw your way out of the pit is your brothers arguing on whether or not to just kill you or to sell you into slavery. See, Joseph found himself in the middle of a literal pit, but also a spiritual one. See, his identity and all the things he was thankful for, including his amazing Technicolor dream coat, they were gone. He was in his own 2020. Maybe that's where some of us are this morning. The things that we base our foundations are gone. The things we base our happiness and thankfulness upon do not look the same. 2020 has been a nightmare. And Joseph's story up to this point was a nightmare. And I wish I could tell you that Joseph spoke the Lord's Prayer into his situation, into his pit, and everything was better the next day. And I wish I could tell you that the dark night of the soul that you're experiencing right now, the despair, the possible depression, the anxiety, that it's just going to go away after hearing this amazing message from me. But I can't do that because it doesn't happen for us and it didn't happen for Joseph. Joseph's life is full of ups and downs. But what we see through the rest of Joseph's life from this point on is that he's faithful. He doesn't give up and he doesn't surrender. He keeps going. In the words of Dory, he just keeps swimming. And in each situation that Joseph finds himself in, he gives his all. And he gets blessed through it, and the people around him gets blessed because of it. It's actually told to us in Genesis chapter 39, verses 2 and 3, exactly how that was going on. This is after he had been sold into slavery to a man named Potiphar, and it says this: "The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did." See, I believe that is the key to our happiness. Joy and thankfulness are founded on what we just read. I believe that is the answer of how can we be thankful in times such as this. See, no matter the affliction, Christ is there. No matter the pit, Christ is there. We may not see it, and we may not even give him credit in the moment, but God does not take a vacation day. God isn't taking time off. God hasn't forgotten you. God hasn't left you in the midst of this time. God does not socially distance. Joseph found himself in the middle of such dire straits. He was thrown away by his family, sold into slavery, and all the while, he wasn't alone. God was with him. And it was through faith that Joseph willed himself forward. He was in a foreign land, learning a foreign language, a foreign culture, and learning a whole new way of living. And he prospered. And he succeeded. And he flourished. Now, I don't want you to hear that and think that it was a cakewalk for Joseph. It was hard work. Even though he flourished, the storm of his life is still raging on. Do not sugarcoat his situation. Don't do it. Lean into it. Realize he was very aware that he was a slave. It's hard to forget that. It's hard to forget that you're no longer with your family and you're in a foreign land and that you're speaking a different language. It's very clear to notice that Potiphar is not your father. He knows he's in Egypt, yet he can still allow God to work through him, and he allows his faith to be bigger than the storm of his life. He allows his faith to be bigger than the pit of despair that he found himself in. And I believe that many Christians today have cheapened that word faith into saying the sinner's prayer and believing that Christ died and rose again, full stop, that's it. But faith is much more than that. Faith is more than your golden ticket to heaven. It's much deeper and wider than that. Faith is taking a step out of the boat like Peter. This is another famous story. Casting Crowns wrote an amazing song, right? It's probably still played on WBGL. It's probably still played on all of the Christian radio stations. If not, it's on Spotify, right? And it went like this. Oh, what I would do to have the kind of faith it takes to step out of this boat again, onto the crashing waves, to step out of my comfort zone where Jesus is, and he's holding out his hand. See, we sing that song, right? If not, it's probably stuck in your head right now. I know it is in mine. We sing that song and we've heard this story, but we kind of lose the awe of it. I want to read the passage where it comes from, and I want us to get some grasp of it. He says this: when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, him is Jesus, by the way, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and they cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it is you, Peter replied, tell me to come out onto the water. Come, he said. I want us to realize something about this story. Peter, in a matter of 15 seconds, went from thinking that there was a ghost on the water, which is a weird first step, I will give you that, to thinking that this might be someone he knows. That is a weird process. He went from being a ghost hunter on the Discovery Channel to being David Blaine in 15 seconds. See, Peter shows us in this moment what true faith is. He didn't know how it was going to work. He didn't know why it was going to work. He didn't know for certain that it was even Jesus, right? He's saying, I'm going to step out on the water in faith. He doesn't know that it's actually Jesus. Is how he's proving it, is by him walking on the water. How crazy is that? See, faith is acting without even knowing. See, in our current age, we need tangibility. We need to be able to touch it and feel it, smell it. But that isn't biblical faith. The Apostle Thomas is dogged on all the time for needing to touch and see Jesus' wounds. It's crazy, you probably didn't even recognize me calling someone the Apostle Thomas because you don't know him by anything else but doubting Thomas. But that's how we operate our faith oftentimes, right? Is we have to be able to see it and touch it. We need to know that God's moving somehow in some tangible way. But true biblical faith is trusting in the attributes and identity and righteousness of God to be good on his promise. I'm going to say that again. Biblical faith is trusting in the attributes and identity and righteousness of God to be good on his promises. So how can we be thankful in a time such as this? We can be thankful in faith. What do I mean by that? Be thankful even when there is seemingly nothing to be thankful for. Then you will find out that there's a bounty of things to be thankful for. When you are unsure of things to be thankful for, be thankful for the smallest things in life. See, there's this quote that we share here at Walnut Grove quite often from C.S. Lewis. And it goes like this: he who has God and everything else has no more than he who has God only. So how can we be thankful in times such as this? What we do is we place our faith into the trust of who God is and who the Bible says he is, and we will begin to grow in our faith into a place where this quote from C.S. Lewis can become a reality for us. This isn't going to happen overnight. But it isn't going to happen if all we do is mope and complain on Facebook threads about how things didn't go our way. See, when we allow our faith to grow, so will our thankfulness and our ability to give thanks for what to some may seem like ignorance, but to us will be so deeply beautiful. So in reality, what we have to be thankful for isn't yet fully seen and is yet to be fully realized. But faith, like a mustard seed, is made to grow. Then so can your thankfulness. So how can we be thankful in times such as this? Here are a few things that I've thought about of how we can grow in thankfulness. The first one is this: journal. Journaling isn't just for the preteen who's journaling about the boy that she likes, writing his name over and over and over again in hearts. That's not the depth of journaling. See, journaling for us can be a beautiful thing. I don't know about you, but I kind of have short-term memory loss sometimes. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, let alone what God was doing in my life 6 months ago. And so a journal can allow us to sit down and write out what are the prayers and hopes that we have? Who are the people that we're praying for? What are the things that we're hoping happens? What are the things we hope don't happen? What are the things that we are thankful for? And then what we can do is we can see this beautiful unveiling as we look back at our journal of how God has been faithful and how we have been faithful and how we have grown and how our prayers have grown. So number one is journaling. Number two, work hard to not fixate on certain things, but to keep a perspective. Don't fixate on the negative. Look up. See, like Nick Vujicic said, if we're constantly thinking of the things we don't have or the things we wish we had, we lose sight of the things that we do have. So work on perspective. Realize that God worked through Joseph's life, right? Joseph's life was so much bigger, so much deeper than that pit. And what's amazing is if Joseph hadn't gone into that pit, and if Joseph hadn't been sold into slavery, his entire family line would have perished in the famine that came many years later. I want you to realize that. Number three, if you find certain things cause you to not be thankful or faithful or righteous, stop doing those things. See, Jesus tells us that if your eye causes you to sin, cut it out. Now here's the thing. There's two parts to this. One, realize that Jesus doesn't really want you to cut your eye out. What he's saying is, cut the stuff out that causes bad problems. But the other thing is this, it's also showing that even if our eyes cause us to sin and we cut them out, we would still sin. So we need transformation through the grace of Holy Spirit. But number three is that. Cut out the things, the patterns, and the people in your life maybe that are causing you to go back into those pits of despair. Number four, and lastly, if all else fails, do something for someone else. Love your dang neighbor. Do what Jesus commanded with his last words here on earth. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you to the very end of this age. Notice, Jesus says, do these things and I will be with you. The same way that God was with Joseph in the pit, the same way that God was with Joseph in the prison later on in his life, and the same way that God provides to this day. Christ promises to be with us. So, number one is journaling. Number two is keep a perspective. Number three is cut out the things that cause you to go back into ruts. And number four, help other people. I hope that we can truly look for the things that make us thankful today. I think there's something to be said about someone who is thankful for an eternal thing versus something that vanishes. I hope to talk with you in the comments, and I hope that this is a blessing for you, and I hope that we can gather in a in a more fully way in the near future. But whatever it is, I hope you are blessed so that you can be a blessing.